we on? Okay, well, I'm very excited. I've got my friends here all the way from Melbourne. Well, you guys are a bit of nomads at the moment. But we have Zana and Isaac here from Mindful Growth Academy. Welcome, guys.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
How have you found New Zealand since you've been here?
Well, I'm from New Zealand, obviously.
Yes.
I love being home. It's so beautiful. It's been such an epic summer, I feel like. So, yeah, we've been up in Waipu at my dad's house just chilling out. And, yeah, it's been epic.
The views look amazing up there.
It's really
so
beautiful.
Nice.
So peaceful. It's crazy.
Waipu's just so beautiful as well too. Like the beach and the mountains. It's incredible.
Yeah,
it's one of my favourite places in the world, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So pretty. And yesterday we held a breathwork session down at Takapuna Beach, which was awesome. Heaps of new beginners trying it out for the first time.
Yeah, it's really cool when you see people come down and give something like that a go.
Yeah.
And just like the way their nervous systems just instantly sort of relax, and a lot of people got emotional about that.
Yeah.
You know? I think they like had that first moment of like, whoa, like this is what it feels like to be like properly relaxed, which was really cool.
That's what
watch.
everyone kept saying, eh? They're like, I've never been this relaxed in my life.
Yeah, I noticed when I hugged everyone when they first came, the hug was a little bit like standoffish, and then by the end it was like a full embrace.
Yes. so
cool.
cool, eh? I know seeing some of the girls cry, it reminded me so much of not even my first experiences, but some of my practices. Just like releasing or like, you know, just I think even coming to that moment where you're like, wow, I haven't connected with myself in so long. I haven't fully relaxed in so long.
Yeah, you're like doing all the time.
Yeah.
But then when you do something like breath work, it's like a way of just instantly coming back to that present moment and just sort of like being there and being like, and because it has an effect on your body can relax as well.
Yeah.
You know, so you're not in that tug of war of agitation.
Yeah.
So it's like, wow, like it's so grounding.
Can you tell us a little bit more about breath work and what it does for the body and the mind? And
yeah, so I mean, there's so many different styles of breath work, obviously. Some of the more common ones you'll see at the moment are like holotropic, which is the ones that you'll see where people are doing like the big emotional releases. And when people are doing that type of breath work, it actually kind of changes their state of consciousness, so it alters it a little bit, which allows them to sort of have these big emotional releases. So it's definitely like we've done it before, and it's incredible. It's exhausting. Like
really?
You'll do it because it's about an hour usually.
50 or 60 minutes of constant breathing. Like think of Wim Hof, but just constantly doing that for like 50, 60 minutes.
Wow.
And so after you go through the stages of fear about like, well, what's happening to me, the kind of blah, blah network, the inner commentary starts to kind of settle down. And this kind of allows for like people to emotionally purge, and people like I cried and yelled.
Yeah, I
and
was going to say, how was your experience? Because I know you've been through a lot in your life.
Yeah, there was a lot of crying, a lot of yelling, and like everyone just is open to do it as well too. So you kind of just all around the room, everyone's doing crying and laughing and yelling. Yeah.
And it's quite like when you're doing it, you get sort of a sensation in your body that sort of sometimes your whole hands can sort of like go almost like a raptor. Like, it's called tenant, I think. And it's sort of like this experience that happens. And often they'll say, if, you know, the facilitator will say, if that happens, like, and you want to pull back, but otherwise try and work through it. And it's sort of going to the door of discomfort and trusting yourself that you're okay. And when you do that, it like sort of the times when I felt that, and then I was like, no, just keep breathing. It was like I'd feel like these full, just massive bits of energy just come into my body and then just want to go out.
Wow.
Like it's almost like, I think of it kind of like emotional cleansing in a way of like, you know, there's so many things that happen in your day where you just sort of suck it up, push it down, just little by little, and it kind of just builds up over time. And then you just do these big releases and it just sort of makes you feel a lot more relaxed. I don't know if it like necessarily releases full trauma from childhood and stuff, but it definitely releases that energy that gets stuck in your body, which is nice. Yeah.
So interesting.
It's like a purging. Emotional purging.
Yeah.
Because we've got a lot of it inside of us, stored energy, you know. That's what emotions are, is energy. And so, it allows us to purge some of this kind of like, I guess, subconscious emotions that's sitting just below the surface. it's powerful.
And
Yeah,
is
definitely.
that like with a specific guide, or is that like...
I mean, I think people can do it on their own. I wouldn't advise it, but
Yeah.
usually people will be facilitators that
Yeah.
take people through it.
Yeah.
And that's just so that they can kind of comfort people during those experiences.
Yeah.
That's what sort of someone that holds space does. You're not necessarily doing anything. You're just being there to allow that person to have that experience.
Yes.
And so usually it's done in a group, which also brings another energy to it. Everyone's set an intention to go there for that reason. That's why it can be so powerful for people.
Yeah.
And as you say, like, breathwork can be that real opening, like you found, Tim, like at the opening to all those other types of things. So if you've never done meditation or anything like that before, but you go into a breathwork class and you have that emotional experience like we saw yesterday with people, it's like, whoa, like this is like game changing. What is this? You know, I've never felt these emotions before, but man, I feel good. Like, yeah. So it's I feel like breathwork's great in that way.
Yeah.
It's a real door opener.
Yeah.
It's a doorway, definitely. It's
Definitely.
a doorway to getting in touch with yourself at a deeper level, and even spirituality.
Yes,
I find it's a
agreed.
doorway for that as well too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me, I reckon.
Yeah.
Got into breathwork and I was like, holy heck, what the heck's this feeling?
Yeah.
And then you just want to chase it again, eh? What's some of the like benefits you get from it though, like physically, do you reckon?
So, okay, so if you're talking about like, we'll talk about Wim Hof more as a benefit. Obviously, the emotional release is a benefit of the holotropic.
Yeah.
But with Wim Hof, it helps to increase, like, well, there's so many benefits. But I'll go from when you're doing it, you're basically charging your body full with oxygen. And we actually all overbreathe. So we bring in a lot of oxygen, but we're not very CO2 sensitive. So obviously when you breathe in, you take in oxygen and then your body uses that oxygen to metabolize energy and then it creates CO2 as a byproduct. So that CO2 level, we have like receptors in our body, and when we need a certain amount of CO2 to push the oxygen into our cells.
Right.
But oftentimes we'll just always overbreathe and we're not actually getting enough CO2 into our blood. So when you do Wim Hof and things, those types of breath retention, breath work sessions, it actually helps you to become more sensitive to CO2 because you're bringing in a whole lot of oxygen, but then you're not breathing. And so when you don't breathe, your CO2 increases. And that's really important for like a lot of different health benefits. Obviously, it increases your lung capacity, your heart capacity. But then also another thing that happens is you release cortisol into your body.
Adrenaline.
Adrenaline, which inadvertently makes you release cortisol, but it's only a small amount that it has an anti-inflammatory effect. So that's really important. So when you have like sickness or things like that and you do Wim Hof, it increases your immune response.
Wow.
Yeah. So like when we get sick, I'll do cold showers, Wim Hof like once to two times a day, and it just is game changing at getting you back on your feet quicker.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it really dampens the inflammation response in the body, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Remember that time in Bali you had dengue fever?
Yeah.
And dengue fever like floors you. And she did Wim Hof multiple times a day, did cold showers multiple times a day. And within 3 days, she was like at a cafe sitting there eating food.
Oh
and people
my
were like,
gosh.
we were telling people and they're like, when did you get it? And we're like, oh, like 2.5 days ago. And she's like, they're like, what do you do? How are you even here?
Like you didn't have that.
Yeah.
It must have been something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
Like, and it was brutal. Like, but like, you know, I guess the hardest thing for people to get their head around is, you know, when you're sick, you're like, oh, hot shower and just snuggle up in bed. But even recently, my cousin was not well, and I was like, just trust me. Like, please, she had body aches and stuff. And I was like, please just trust me. Go and have a cold shower. And when she came out, she had a cold shower and did Wim Hof with Isaac. And she was like giggling. She was like, why didn't you guys make me do this earlier? And I was like, because you've been resistant to it. But she was like, I feel like at least 50% better. Like, it's actually amazing how much it helps. Yeah, definitely.
That's wild.
So cool.
Hard out. Yeah, because no one wants to not go near a cold shower when they're sick.
Yeah.
Let alone breath work as well.
100%.
Yeah, that's so cool.
But when you do it and you feel the effects, you're like, I know it's what I need to do.
Yeah.
It makes such a huge difference.
Massive, yeah.
You can like halve your recovery time when you've got like a flu, COVID, anything like that.
Really?
Yeah.
And the cold showers feel so like counterintuitive. You're like, this is going to make it worse.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. And I wouldn't suggest that people who have never done cold showers just jump in the cold shower when they've got a flu or when they're sick.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
if you get used to it now and then do it when you're sick,
right.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, so how would someone start to get used to something like cold showers?
Just by doing it, but for very short amounts of time
Yeah,
to begin
yeah.
with.
So have your normal shower, then turn it
Correct.
at the end. Yeah.
So
fully.
I always suggest somebody will start just with their normal shower and then turn their back to the shower head and then whack it onto cold. And then think about it like when you go into the ocean at the beach and it's cold and you're like, but then all of a sudden you're like, actually, it's not as bad as I thought.
Yeah.
So your body needs that time to adapt. And I reckon that's easiest to do on your back. Once you feel like you're like a bit more, okay, it's just on my back and right, you can start to turn around and get it on your whole body. But if at first you just need to do it on your back, that's fine. And you just do it like 30 seconds probably is usually when that adaptation starts.
Yeah.
And another way you can do it is just actually like step out after the warm shower, step away from it, turn it to cold, and then just start putting your hands and your arms in.
Yeah.
And just getting your hands and arms used to it, and then putting your legs in as well too. And that might be the first time you do it.
Yeah.
And then the next time you can go a little bit deeper. But it's always like the first 10 seconds is always the hardest. That's when you like freak out. You're like,
So is that when you want to start trying to control your breath a bit more? Or
Yep. So when I do ice baths, I'll kind of focus on my breathing. So just like a mindfulness meditation, I'll kind of, as I breathe in, I'll just mentally say in. And as I breathe out, I'll mentally say out.
Yeah.
And when you focus on that in, out, and you mentally say that to yourself, your breath starts to calm down.
Right. I noticed that in the breathwork soundtrack yesterday. Really good.
It definitely helps because you've got something to focus on.
Yes.
So your mind doesn't go, oh my God, it's so cold. Like, you know, you're just like
In, out, yeah.
Yeah.
But one thing I definitely think is important if you're doing the cold shower and you do start to get under it is to try your best to allow yourself to get to that adaptation. Otherwise, sometimes it can just feel colder.
Yeah.
Because people like, that was horrible because I just went in for a tiny bit and then got out.
Yeah.
You need that kind of switch over to happen to then go, okay, actually now I feel calm.
It's almost like you imagine a needle on like a thermometer or something, and it's going all the way to the end. It's going it's absolutely freezing, and you're like, it's really like, it's almost suffering, and you go all the way like that, and then after about 15, 20 seconds, the needle just goes back that way, and your whole body just starts to, and your breath starts to change. But that first 10 to 15 seconds, you got to get past that.
Yeah.
That's the worst part. And then afterwards, you're like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Everyone steps out like, why haven't I done this earlier?
Yeah.
And one thing, living in Melbourne, obviously it can be quite cold in the winter.
Yeah.
But I definitely noticed when I was doing it regularly before winter, I never got anywhere near as cold. Like I just adapted to the cold way more, which is like a massive win because I hate the cold, really. But, so it was like another reason why you would do it. Definitely helps you.
Do you reckon there's heaps of benefits for like athletes to get into it?
Oh, for sure.
Recovery, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like muscle recovery?
Yeah.
Nervous system recovery, which is part of muscle recovery.
True.
So you can measure your heart rate variability. Do you guys know what that is?
No.
So it's basically a measure of your nervous system based on your heart rate. And so you get a number, you measure your heart rate variability, and let's say it's 42, a number.
Can I just explain what that means? And like,
Sure.
So like you have your heart rate, right? And we all know how to measure our heart rate. The variability is the variability between the beats.
Right.
So if you have a low variability, it's going dung, 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 right? So that's more like you're going to be pumping adrenaline.
Yeah.
But if you've got dung, 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 and you've got a high variability, it's kind of changing. It's because you're in a more relaxed state. So that's what that variability means. Does that make sense?
And it's not, you're not trying to get like your heart rate shouldn't be perfect. It shouldn't be da-dung, da-dung. It should be there should be variation in your heart rate. But if you measure your heart rate variability and then start doing Wim Hof breathing cold showers, you'll notice within a month how much your heart rate variability has gone up in a good way. And in terms of like muscle recovery, if you're an athlete training all the time, because a lot of athletes these days measure their heart rate variability to see when like some days they wake up and their HRV is low, then they know to do a recovery day on that day.
Yeah.
And so when you know your heart rate variability is low, then you can train just at a kind of recovery level, but then you go and do an ice bath and Wim Hof, and you'll watch your heart rate variability shoot up to a really good place the following day, pretty much straight away.
How do you measure that?
So there is apps, and if you can use like heart rate monitors,
Right.
and that will then link it up to the app, and then that will show you your heart
Right.
rate variability. But to do it like really properly, like a lot of people have like wristbands and stuff that'll do it, but I think the best is doing it on a chest monitor
fully.
first thing in the morning before you have coffee, you get up and do anything, because you just want to test what it's like at resting when you've just woken up, and then that, especially for athletes, gives them such a good gauge of like, okay, because mind can always push you past where your body's actually functioning. So it might wake up and be like, I'm actually exhausted today, but I have to go train
But
really
you're like,
hard.
I can do it. I'm going to push through.
And then when that happens, people start overtraining, and then they get sick, and then they get injured. So it's like a smart way of learning how to really be training based on what your nervous system's doing.
I suppose it would be really good as like for fighters
100%.
Like
They would
amazing.
because you're just been through that fight or flight
Yeah.
for how many rounds and the build up towards it and after.
I used to do breathwork like before each of my fights in the locker room. But this one time I done breathwork, I fully span out and forgot where I was.
Yeah,
Like, have you had that before?
You can.
I think I had
But it's
adrenaline pumping in my
adrenaline as
body.
well.
It's
It's
like,
And then I done breathwork,
Yeah.
and then like, as soon as I finished, I was like fully lost. I forgot where
Spaced
I
out.
was.
Was
Yeah.
this also the one where you'd cut a whole heap of weight, or was it?
Nah.
You're probably already.
This happened like a couple times, but
right.
It can leave
yeah,
you
I
a
fully
bit spacey.
span out, and I like fully like honestly forgot where I was,
Yeah.
and I was like,
wow.
oh shit, opened
Yeah.
my eyes, and I was like, holy fuck.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd do it before like an event
Yeah.
like
No,
that.
yeah.
Because it can leave you quite spacey for a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
But
would be
before-
more
Recovery.
Recovery.
Yeah,
100%.
I learned anyway.
Yeah.
Didn't do it.
That's the way we figure it out, right? You just got to try it.
It
and
was
then be
the
like,
meditation. I changed it with the
Yeah.
meditation
Yeah.
before the
Yeah.
fight.
Yeah, because then as soon as I finished, it was like 2 minutes later, the lady's like, "Sweet Tim, you're up," and I was like, "What?" like forgot my game plan and everything. Like I said, don't do it when you're like about to go.
Nah, don't do Wim Hof breathing before that. That would be more of a recovery thing.
Yeah.
And just with the HRV, the best, you'd probably want to get the polar chest straps. H10 chest straps are probably the best.
Right.
And then there's an app called Elite HRV.
Okay.
And that'll teach you all about it as well too. So that
Joe
would be-
Jameson used to actually do a lot of fighters, didn't he?
Yeah, one of the guys that I learnt HRV from, Joel Jameson, he was head trainer of Demetrius Johnson.
Oh
at
yeah,
Oh,
Mighty
yeah.
true.
Mouse. Yeah,
Name.
yeah. He made HRV popular
Yeah,
in the
that's
sporting
right.
world.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I will link that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
How would you say breath work and stuff has worked for you? I know you've struggled with. Can we hear more about what this does for anxiety and maybe your experiences with anxiety?
Yeah, so I used the Wim Hof method for about 4 years every day. And so growing up, I was always an anxious kid. I saw a lot of domestic violence and stuff. And I remember having panic attacks when I was like 10, 11 years old. And my mum would take me to, I remember going to hospital and no one knew what that was back then.
Yeah.
And they took all kind of tests and like, oh, nothing's wrong with him. So I always grew up, like everyone's nervous and stuff at certain times, but I was quite anxious all the time. And that's why I got into meditation. And I did get into breath work to Wim Hof for about 4 years, and it was very helpful. But in the end, it was a kind of form of bypassing.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a fan anymore of trying to get rid of how you feel. And that's what meditation teaches you, is to learn to be okay with how you feel.
Right.
And there's a big difference between trying to get rid of how you feel, because the thing that energizes anxiety is the fear of anxiety. It's like this boogeyman that we've all created.
Like, I can feel it coming.
Yes,
like,
yes, yeah.
And I think that's the difference of where you would use breath work, is that like you're talking more in the moment of anxiety. Breath work's probably an escape. But if you have a heightened nervous system all the time and you need to start to calm that down, then breath work can be beautiful for that, when you're just like, it's part of my morning routine because I'm doing good stuff for my nervous system.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if I'm in the car and I'm having a panic attack, then I'm not going to do Wim Hof or something to try and get rid of it. That's kind of the difference of what
Right.
Isaac's
Oh,
saying.
It creates this, like, the thing about anxiety, because I went through probably a year and a half, 2 years of generalized anxiety disorder. And this was only a few years ago. And the thing about anxiety is it's always the fear. When your brain turns the fear dial up, the more you fear anxiety, and it becomes like it sensitizes your nervous system basically. so that you feel anxiety all the time at the drop of a hat.
Right.
And so exactly what Zana was saying. So breath work, we use it can be a healing tool for our nervous system, and we can do it every day. We can wake up in the morning or do it in the afternoon, but not as an escape from anxiety, because every time you do that, you're sending a message to your brain that you're afraid of anxiety.
Yeah.
And this is what creates a sensitivity to anxiety. Anxiety is actually very normal. It's a normal feeling of like a nervousness, right? But it's just that our fear of anxiety creates this like boogeyman in the closet. But when you open the door and you realize that it's just a shadow, then you can start to, it's not really, there's no danger in anxiety.
Yeah.
They actually did a study and found that when people have a panic attack, it's biochemically the same. You get the same biochemical changes in the body as you do when you have an orgasm.
Wow.
Yeah. So when they actually measure that, that's like two totally different experiences, so to speak. But it's exactly what Isaac's talking about, the fear around the experience versus what's actually happening physically. So when you break down that experience of anxiety, it's quite different in the body, but what the mind says about it is totally different. So if you are someone that really does struggle with anxiety a lot, doing breath work and stuff is really beautiful to help just rebalance that nervous system. But ultimately, when it comes to the experience of it in the moment, breath work, I would say, is an avoidance. And that will just keep telling your body, no, we don't like this. And that makes it more sensitive to it. So every time you experience it, you're like...
So being okay with those emotions like anxiety and letting it be as it is.
Teaching you, so the way that I healed myself from generalized anxiety disorder was through acceptance. And they've coined it now acceptance therapy, but this incredible psychiatrist, she's no longer with us, but she was big back in the 70s, I think, maybe even the 80s. So I stumbled across her on YouTube, and she basically would just teach you all about anxiety and basically just tell you that it's your fear of anxiety which has sensitized your nervous system. And the moment you start to stop fearing anxiety because it's not dangerous, then your nervous system will start to heal itself.
Right.
And so it's really an attitude change towards anxiety. That's what, and if everybody understood this, because I remember seeing a stat that I think 35% of people worldwide will develop an anxiety disorder.
That's massive.
It's massive. And that's only the people that go to the doctor, right? But if everybody understood anxiety, what it really was, and they started to learn what acceptance was, this would, within 10 years, there would be no more anxiety disorders.
Because we're taught from a young age, right? Well, it's like, you know, you've got anxiety, get rid of it, take this pill, do all these different things. Like, it's not good to have it. You shouldn't feel these experiences. But if we changed our attitude towards it and realized that every single one of us has that normal human experience and it's not to be feared, you know, it's uncomfortable, but it's not going to harm us.
Yeah.
You know, like that's a major, and
I
like
know.
we don't though. We like, as soon as we start to feel like, no, I have to get rid of this, I have to make myself feel better in order to be okay.
And it's because, like, you think about anxiety, it's an alarm system, right? It's an alarm to warn you of danger. And so it tricks you into feeling that there is an actual danger, that it's unsafe right now, through your thoughts, through memory, and through the feelings in your body. So it's a trickster. It's constantly tricking us. It needs to make us feel like there's an actual danger.
Yeah.
But the thing about anxiety, the feelings and the thoughts, no matter what thoughts are coming, no matter what sensations you're feeling, you're safe. Every time you are safe. There's no danger. It was a primitive response to the saber-toothed tiger for our ancestors. There's a saber-toothed tiger potentially around the corner, anxiety.
Yeah.
There's no more saber-toothed tiger.
Feels like there is sometimes.
Yeah, but there isn't, and it's really important to understand that it's an alarm system that tries to make you feel like you're unsafe.
Yeah.
But the moment you call its bluff, you start to change your attitude to it, and you realize that there is no danger here. It's like Zana said, biochemically, it's the same as an orgasm. When you start to like feel into that more and more, then all of a sudden anxiety starts to lessen, and someone who has a sensitive nervous system starts to heal themselves.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
So how does someone practice acceptance and, you know, kind of change their thoughts around anxiety?
I would say you need someone who's experienced it to guide you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because otherwise, like, we can sit here and like go, oh, just accept your anxiety. And
Yeah,
people will be
yeah.
like, I'm not doing
Almost
that.
dismissive,
That's-
yeah.
You know what I mean? So you do need someone to guide you. And once you have someone who's been through it to guide you, who understands the nuances of anxiety, then it becomes, okay, I can change my attitude to this.
Is that something you do for your clients?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, so we have a meditation course, and within that meditation course is some stuff about emotions and a lot about anxiety. And actually, we created this method called the task method, and it's about your task is to accept and allow anxiety. And so basically the T stands for take a deep breath. So you kind of take a deep breath, just breathing in and kind of sighing out and creating a bit of space for yourself. And then the A stands for acknowledge. And so that acknowledgement is that no matter what your memory is doing, no matter what your thoughts are telling you, that it's scary and that it's unsafe, no matter what your sensations, because they're very scary. Obviously, anxiety feels very scary. No matter what your sensations are doing, you're safe. So there's an acknowledgement that I'm not in any danger. I'm safe right now.
Right.
And then the S stands for something that we got from the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, is one of my favorite teachers. And he created something called Smile Yoga.
Yeah.
We did it yesterday in our meditation session. And so it's learning to bring a smile to your face, to your eyes, to your heart space, and really smiling from your whole body. And smiling like this has just an effect of balancing your nervous system. And it kind of like brings this open, accepting, warm, receptive energy to your body and mind. Mm-hmm. And once you kind of learn to do this smile yoga all the time, through whether you're meditating or not, then you can start to bring that in, create that balancing kind of feel in your nervous system. And then you even start smiling at your thoughts, right? Because your thoughts are what really the thing that kind of drum anxiety home. And so once you're smiling like this and you've taught yourself this smile yoga, then you can start smiling and being playful at your thoughts, which are telling you, oh, something catastrophic is going to happen if you do this and you do that. So you start smiling at your thoughts, and you even start smiling at these sensations. And then the K stands for kindness. And kindness is just an understanding that anxiety is a protector, right? So you can imagine when you were a kid and something really deeply embarrassing happened, or you got bullied, anxiety arises the next time you go into a situation like that to warn you and be like, hey, don't go into that situation. So it's really like a childhood protector.
Yeah.
And so when you start to see your anxiety as this childhood protector that's become misguided because you're an adult now, right? You don't need that. Then you can start offering kindness to anxiety, to the sensations.
Right.
And you can go to the feeling, like I usually feel a lot in the pit of my stomach.
Yeah.
And you can go to that feeling and you can talk to it and say, darling, I know you're suffering, but I'm here for you. Or call it sweetheart. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sweetheart, I can see that you're suffering, but I'm not in any danger, and I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And so you just offer kindness to wherever you feel it in your body and kind of soften.
And it's interesting because, like, when Isaac was going through, like, quite the difficult time that he had, a lot of it was around sleep anxiety. And so, like, I remember he'd get he'd get fearful about the idea of going to sleep because he knew that he wouldn't sleep. So it was like this perpetuating cycle, right? And then, like, in the middle of the night, I'd wake up and I could feel him, like, his, like, agitation because he hadn't slept, and then he was anxious. And, like, sometimes I'd just put my, like, hand on his chest and be like, smile, darling, like, it's okay. And just that, like, starting to soften, like, instantly his whole body would just change. Like, it seems really, like, ridiculous, but it's so simple, and it just, like, melts that tension, that resistance, because that's all it is, resistance to what you are feeling, which keeps enforcing that cycle. The other day, one of my clients messaged me and she was struggling. She's had, like, a massive few weeks and some family stuff. And she called me and she was like, can I talk? And she was having a panic attack and she didn't really know what was happening. And I sat with her and I just said to her, I was like, just think of this like almost like you have the flu in your nervous system right now. And I was like, and what you need to do is just be okay with the fact that your nervous system has the flu. In the same way as you would lie on the couch and you just rest and you'd be like, you know what, I feel really crappy with the sore throat or whatever, but I understand that I just need to chill out. I was like, your nervous system is doing the same thing. It's just you've not experienced this before, but you just have to allow those sensations to be there in the same way you would a sore throat. And once she understood that, she was like, oh, she just stopped resisting it. And she went from like, I don't know what's happening, I can't feel it, to just like, oh, yeah, okay. And like she just instantly was kind of like less like worried about it because she understood it a bit more. So simple.
The moment you drop resistance, which is just what. So acceptance is non-resistance, right?
Yes.
The moment you drop that resistance, automatically it just settles down by itself.
Yes.
And anxiety is essentially a lot of it's stored up energy in the body that needs to be released, right? And so avoiding it and suppressing it just stores more of it. And so when anxiety is releasing itself, it's a good thing sometimes. You've been triggered. Allow this energy to release itself with the task approach, with the T, the A, the S, and the K.
Right.
And she did that afterwards. I gave her that video and she like messaged me after and she was like, thank you so much. She was like, it's just, we overcomplicate these things so much because we just don't understand them. But once, as Isaac said, you have someone that can just show you and guide you, wow, it's life-changing because you start befriending those feelings rather than pushing them away.
Yeah, I've spent so long fighting it as well.
Yeah.
Or like suppressing it with marijuana, whatever, drinking, even drugs.
I did that for like 10 years, 15 years.
Longer,
Yeah, tell us a bit about how you led up to this journey, like how you were before.
So I would say that I kind of grew up in a bit of a shitty household, like witnessing a lot of kind of domestic violence and stuff. And
was it in New Zealand or
in Australia?
Oh, yeah.
So my parents are from New Zealand, but I grew up in Australia. And then through my 20s, I hung around with like some really bad people and drunk and took drugs and basically just went down a bad track. And a lot of my friends now are in jail or they're addicted to drugs. And out of a stroke of luck, I ended up moving to Melbourne and getting away from all of those people. I became a personal trainer. And I always love exercise and training, and it was very helpful for me, but it was another form of avoidance too. I was avoiding my feelings. And then I met Zana, and then I would say a couple of years later, when I stopped drinking so much, more of these feelings started to become more evident to me because I was my distraction strategies were not as good, because I was always going to the pub and drinking and training and doing that.
And this was like nearly 10 years ago, so all of the stuff we're talking about now wasn't available to us in the same way.
Totally.
And so I remember having a panic attack in the middle of the night where sometimes I'd jump up out of bed and be like, just have and I remember having a really bad one. And I remember kind of like, I didn't really believe in a religious God at that time, but I remember praying, going like, please God, help me to like not feel this anymore. And the next day I remember seeing something online about meditation. And I was just like, oh, that's interesting. And then a couple of days later, a friend of mine asked me if he's like, oh, I read this book about meditation. You should read it. And I was like, surely, like, are my prayers being answered right now? And
was it the thing Simmons?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, because that's the first one you gave me.
Yeah. And so I was like, surely this is a sign my prayers have been answered. And so I started meditating, and I've always had like the ability to really like commit to something when I commit to it. So I can obsessively commit to, you know that. Yeah. And so I obsessively committed to it. And I would say for the first year, I was just like nodding off and falling asleep and realizing, wow, my mind's so noisy. This is horrible. Like, what am I doing this for? I'm like, nope, it answered them. I feel like my prayers are being answered. I've got to stick to it. And that was probably the start of it. And then
for our honeymoon, we went to India probably about 4 years later and did a meditation teacher training course. And I feel like that's where it really changed for us, because we spent like 4 weeks in an ashram, getting up every single day, meditating for hours and learning all these different things. So that kind of really cemented our journey into it. And brought us both closer together on that path as well.
What a special time to do it as well, like on a honeymoon.
And we got a bit random, but we got ripped off by a friend. It's suffering that pushes you to do the good things, right? Our friend ripped us off like $50,000 as well too, and so we were really stressed about that. And Zana got into meditation as well about a year or so after I got into it. And then we just decided to go to the Himalayas and study meditation in an ashram there.
Well, what's ashram? What's that?
It's like a place where people live that's usually associated to yoga, and it's kind of like everyone's living the same lifestyle. It's like a community. It's like a yoga house. We'll
That's
call
so
it.
cool.
Cool.
Yeah. So a lot of people will go and live in ashram and they'll follow a yogic diet and a yogic lifestyle, and they'll do meditation and like, when I say yoga is like a philosophy, but we think of yoga in the West as asana classes, which is where people do the exercise.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
So
that's what I was
they'll
thinking the whole time.
Yoga is definitely not just asana. So that's one part of yoga.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is a life philosophy, really.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And
Like
ashram's like a Buddhist temple for
Yes,
yogis,
for
for budding
yogis.
yogis. I guess it's the India's version of it, like a kind of temple like that, where people go to study yoga and live in a like-minded community. And so, yeah, we went and studied in the Himalayas, studied meditation there, and did like Vipassana and all these different techniques.
But it was interesting when we were there. It was quite an incredible turning point for our journey, because I think Isaac and I have always been like, we're just fairly normal. We've always been into the gym, but we're not like full gym buffs. And then we've always been we've been into spirituality a lot, but we're not like necessarily like woo-woo kind of spiritual people. And when we were in the Himalayas doing this teacher training course, I see now in reflection, we could have got really pulled into that whole side of it, but we were
The spiritual Kool-Aid.
the spiritual Kool-Aid, which we often call it. But we were in this bookshop and we found this book by this guy called Jiddu Krishnamurti, and he I think we both metaphorically say that he bitch slapped us. Like he spiritually bitch slapped us and made us like really look at our own shit.
Yeah.
And that took us on like a much deeper journey of meditation, where we kind of pushed away a bit from that whole like, everything's so beautiful and universal and conscious and stuff. And actually it was like, no, you need to look at your own shit and who you are as a person and how you are in this world and what your relationship is to everyone and everything.
That's so good that happened, because I think your guys' true essence is like people of service.
Yeah.
And to bring this to people, and to be able to bring this to people, you have to be relatable still.
Yes.
Fully.
Like, I don't think I could sit down with someone super woo-woo and learn about anxiety and things. 'Cause probably in their world it doesn't even exist as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I kind of like, when I went through this couple of years of like generalized anxiety disorder, it was the most fucking horrible thing that I've ever been through, but the most beautiful thing I've been through as well too. And the level of empathy that I have now for other human beings who are going through that is, I just would never have had that had I not gone through that 2 years,
Yeah.
So I always say it was conversely the most horrible and the most beautiful thing that happened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In New Zealand, we've got such a high suicide rate, and a lot of that is with anxiety and depression. What do you think systems and countries could use in their mental health care system?
That's a good one, actually.
Just at a level of education, teaching people about themselves.
Yeah.
Like when people start to understand, like when we suffer, it's always we're feeling sensations in the body and we're believing our thoughts. And people just don't even know that you have the ability to allow your thoughts to pass and park themselves somewhere else. If people understood their mind and understood what emotions are and understood themselves, and they started to teach that at an early age, and even just teaching meditation at an early age, it would literally change the world.
Yeah.
Is it in Denmark? They do it in kindergarten.
Yeah, so there's a lot of schools that are, I think, starting to bring it on.
Yeah.
But I think, Isaac's right. If we started to teach children from a young age, like, you have thoughts and feelings. These are all part of your experience. You are going to grow this persona and this personality, but there's something deeper in you.
Yeah.
There's something that's not going to change throughout your entire life. And you can go to that place when you are more grounded in that understanding, rather than just trying to do all these external things all the time. Like, that's where you can lead true change from.
Yeah.
Because you're coming from a different point. But
Yeah, you don't need to, because we're taught to avoid and suppress our feelings. That's basically the crux of our
Especially
situation.
men.
Yes.
100%, bro. 100%. Suppressing our feelings. And no, I never had a conversation with my dad about my emotions. He had zero emotional intelligence. And so being able to just be vulnerable enough to express ourselves to each other, that's another, like, it's okay to talk about the fact that you're feeling depressed right now.
Yeah.
Or that you're feeling anxious.
Yeah.
And now let's teach you a little bit about what that actually is. It's your thoughts and your sensations in your body. And
I really noticed that at the breathwork yesterday, like a lot of the guys that came struggled.
Yeah.
You could feel it in their body that they were struggling, but the girls just kind of softened into it.
Yes.
And I was like, it's just, I was like,
it's like years and years of,
Yeah.
it's
Just
their
like that
dads and then
tension.
their
Yeah.
dads and then their dads.
Yeah.
It's just
And the
with
friend
them.
circles and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah,
Exactly.
definitely.
And what you guys were talking about yesterday, that whole aspect of like when we're talking about insight dialogue, when you're sitting across from each other, having to break down those barriers of like intimacy between men being gay. Like for females, when we're like intimate in a like hug or something, there's no like, oh, she's a lesbian. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's
So
just
true.
like,
Like anytime
she
I
lingered
talk
a
to
bit
you,
too long.
I like
Yeah.
look deep into your eyes
Yes.
when we chat, and
Yeah.
it's like I express myself.
yes.
yeah.
But yeah, there's never a time where I'm like, oh shit, maybe she thinks I'm a lesbian.
Yeah,
Like,
fully. And men do that. We look like,
men
let's say we're talking about our feelings. If we can't look at each other in the eyes for too long, we're like, oh, I might be gay, so let's look away. Like, what is this conditioning that we have? It's so bad.
Yeah.
I was doing it yesterday. Like, even though we still talked about it, then when I would talk to you, like, I still couldn't look at you in the eyes. I was like, fuck, that's gay. I don't want to do that.
It's like it's the most normal thing in the world to look at someone in the eyes.
But then
Yeah,
I
to
think,
have a
and then I think, oh,
conversation.
maybe he thinks I'm not listening to him. So then I like try to look at you again, and then I'm like, oh fuck, I got to look away now.
And then you're
so
sitting there with
funny.
anxiety and you're like, oh, no.
And now I'm
Do
like,
some
oh
breath
fuck, I
work.
didn't listen to anything you said because I'm just concentrating on fucking.
Not at the appropriate
so
time.
funny.
Yeah.
I did really like though how you said that you can still be masculine and a man's man, but talk about your emotions.
Yes.
I love that because for me, I feel like a strong masculine man is like what I'm attracted to and it's what I want to raise. But I do really want to raise Tommy to be able to talk about his feelings, not just to mum. Like I want him to talk to his dad about that stuff because I know that, when they get hurt or something, they run to mum, and then when they're scared, they run to dad. But like, I just would love for it, like him to have that from his dad as well, so that he knows it's okay to talk to his mates when he doesn't want to talk to us about something. And then, domino effect. Like, I want him to be able to talk to his son like that as well.
It's interesting you talk about that because I think like Isaac's always been like a masculine guy on the outside, right? Like goes to gym, does all this stuff. He's always been like kind of broody. But we've talked about this, like that really doesn't have anything to do with true masculinity. Like there's a stability and a strength that's internal that you project out as a man, which is like holding space in a way that's of strength. And that's so different to like, I'm a man.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's so different going lifting weights and pushing stuff and throwing things and digging holes.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's all like physically great to be capable to do that. And I think that's something that you've really like sort of recognized in yourself, like, and me, because I looked at like the feminine aspects of myself, I felt like I've always been a bit more masculine in my energy, and I found it difficult to like drop into that softer, like I have obviously naturally like nurturing and stuff, but there's parts of me that I've kind of rejected in that way. And I think you kind of have felt that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like human beings, our personalities and our minds we're like complex. We're not just like one thing. Like our minds, our psyches are like split into many different parts. And there's parts of us that are softer and sensitive and vulnerable. And then there's parts of us that are more like assertive and strong and can be good leaders. And it's important that we learn we all have that softer part in us, that sweeter part. And it's important that we learn to kind of like acknowledge that part of us and allow that part of us to shine through when it's the right time for it to shine through,
That is that shadow work you talk about.
That's shadow work,
Isaac had been suppressing his soft, sensitive part for so many years out of fear that he needed to be this like masculine brute on the outside.
It was a protective mechanism for how anxious I felt inside, developing this exterior persona of being tough and strong.
Yeah.
It was just a protective mechanism.
Right.
But you can still be that strength on the outside, but have that connection to that softer aspect of yourself without it being like feminine.
Yeah.
It's just another aspect of your masculinity.
Yeah, definitely.
And an important one. And I feel like when we don't, one of the lessons I learned from going through that period of 2 years of very severe anxiety was that I was afraid of being vulnerable. That was one of the big reasons why I went through it. If I had allowed myself to be more vulnerable, things happen for a reason. So that's the way it worked out. But one of the two lessons I learned was my fear of vulnerability and my fear of discomfort. They were the two of the biggest lessons I learned from that.
Yeah, I can see that in you. Like before all of this stuff, it's like when we would all go out and stuff, like you would always kind of have your back against the wall or like, you know, you're on guard kind of thing.
Fully.
You know, you could so see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be hard for a guy to like, even if they're just listening to this, it would be hard for them to go through that roller coaster to get to where you are. Like, where would you even get started?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I feel like meditation is essential to this journey.
Yeah.
Like, it's just non-avoidable.
Yeah.
It feels uncomfortable.
Everything
at first.
comes up, and you just have to deal with it.
Is there a
Accept it.
wrong and right way to meditate?
I think there's many different techniques to use, and I feel like we should try them all.
Yeah.
I can't stand it when I see people telling other people that this meditation technique is the best one and the only one that works.
Yeah.
I'm just like, stop making money out of this.
Yeah.
But there's many different types, but I feel like being open to trying them all is the best thing. And then some types will start to resonate more as your journey goes on.
What do you mean by types?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
I was going to say there's different techniques, but what I think you're probably meaning more is like there's certain ideas around what people should and shouldn't be achieving.
Yeah,
and that's what gets in the way
Yeah.
of it. Like you could listen to a relaxation one or do a meditation or a mantra one.
I think that's what it was, the types. So the types of meditations are relaxation meditations, which is what most people gravitate to in the beginning, and that's fine. Then there's concentration meditations where you're focusing on something, an object, or even a mantra. And then
What's a mantra?
So you might be repeating a Sanskrit word like ram, ram.
Something that means nothing, is it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's usually a word from the Sanskrit language, which is that they say the vibration of the sound of that word has effect on your body and your mind. So
Right.
it sort of brings you to a centered point.
Okay.
And so those types of meditations, it's a single pointed focus. You're just trying to focus on one thing. But that's just sort of more about teaching the mind to come back to one position. It's sort of the starting point of meditation. And there's so many different types that there's it's not really the types I think you're talking about more. It's about like what you should be achieving. Like that's the right and
Like
wrong you're
people
talking
think-
about.
Like if I close my eyes right
Yeah.
now and I start, and then I can't sit still, or my mind's racing, and I open my eyes and like, fuck, I just done that wrong.
Yeah.
Like, is that wrong, or
Yeah.
is that how do
So
people
I think
know?
you need something to do at first, because otherwise you're just sitting there thinking
Lost in your
lost
thoughts.
in your thoughts,
Yeah.
which is not necessarily what you're wanting to happen. It's okay if you get lost in your thoughts, but you do want to have the intention to be focusing on the present moment. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to teach the mind. The mind is so used to being entangled in our thoughts and always being in the future or the past, but we're trying to essentially come back to the present moment and notice something that's happening here and now. And sometimes at first we need to do that by going, okay, I'm going to follow a mantra. So I'm going to sit down today and I'm just going to say the same mantra over and over. And when I do that, I'll probably get lost in thought. 100% will. So when I remember that I've been lost in thought, I'll just come back to that specific point. And so you can do that by using a guide. You can do it by using a mantra. You can do it by using the breath. There's many different ways. But one of the most important things you need to understand is whatever you choose to do, you are going to get lost in thought. And that is completely okay. So yes, you haven't done it wrong if you've sat down and you've decided, I'm going to do a meditation today and I'm going to follow my breath. And I follow my breath, and for 4 minutes 40 out of the 5 minutes I was lost in thought, that's totally fine. Because you set the intention that you're going to do that. And it just little by little, you're going to get better at coming back to remembering that you're meant to be watching your breath. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely like pulling away the judgment from meditation is so important. Like Zana said, we're so used to being lost in our thoughts that this is what's going to happen. And it's actually important when you meditate that you do get lost in thought, because every time you recognize you're lost in thought, it's like, we'll call it a mini awakening. Your conscious awareness expands ever so slightly. So it's important that you get lost in thought and recognize you're lost in thought. This is one of the most important elements of meditation. And so being able to, from the very get-go, just remove the judgment about thinking and being lost in thought, that's the most important thing. And then learning to like create like a real warm, open, welcoming kind of like feeling in your body and mind when you start, because meditation essentially is like, we're not using it to spiritually bypass our emotions. We're using it again to be okay with whatever's arising, to just be present with what is.
And it's something Isaac said, conscious awareness. As beings, we'll talk about all living beings, we know things. So, you know, if there's a sound, a dog will know the sound, we'll know the sound, but the dog can't reflect on that sound. It doesn't have the capacity to go, I hear the sound. We as human beings we have that evolutionary property where we can go, I am aware of that sound. So when you're in meditation, you are expanding that conscious awareness. You're becoming aware more of the things you experience rather than just being in them the whole time. So you're creating that space, and that's essentially what you're doing. You have this conscious awareness capacity, and every time you sit down, you're going, okay, I'm watching my thoughts. I'm watching my breath. I am aware of my breath. Usually we're just breathing. We take no notice of it, right? So you're taking notice of what is happening now. And that might not seem like it has much of an effect. Like, why would I be doing that? But if you're driving down the road and you're stuck in thoughts about something that your partner did, and you're agitated and you've got feelings in your body and you're fully in that narrative, and then you have this gap that happens. I am aware of these thoughts. I'm aware of the way my body's feeling. It creates a space, and that has profound effects on the way that you then move forward, because you can kind of separate yourself a little bit from it. So instead of being so caught up in those emotions and then reacting and thinking, oh, they've done this to me and whatever it may be, you can start to take a step back. And when you take a step back, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can start to see things clearer. And that's why meditation can be so powerful for like self-growth and like positive change.
Yeah, taking that step back is a wild one. So that's like you listening to that voice in your head, eh?
Yeah.
But then it's like, where's that voice even coming from? Like, how can you hear yourself inside your head when your ears are out here?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was like, when you said that last night, I've guided people who have meditated for years, and I've kind of pointed to exactly what you said last night, and they've gone, so what? And I'm like, and I don't say anything, but I'm like, you pick that up without any guidance that, hold on a second, this little voice in my head that I think is me is being listened to by me.
From something.
Yeah.
Yes.
And my ears are on the outside. Therefore, how am I listening?
Yeah.
That listening is awareness. It's consciousness.
I do that all the time. I'm like, I'll just be like, I'm thinking of something, but then there's something listening to my thoughts, saying that to me on the outside.
Well, that's you.
There's like a three layer, like,
Sure.
And I always buzz out, but I've never talked to anyone about it.
Yeah.
I thought that was quite profound that you said that yesterday.
Yes, definitely.
That recognition is the recognition of consciousness, awareness behind your thoughts. Consciousness is always present. You can't experience anything without consciousness. You have to be conscious of it. And so every time we think whatever we're doing, consciousness is in the background, knowing that experience, the thoughts and the sounds and whatever.
So you're not your thoughts, eh? So
You are not your thoughts.
Well, that's where it comes from. You are not your thoughts, is that whatever you are aware of can't be what you are essentially. Your essential self, this aware presence in the background, is what you are fundamentally. It's just that we've been lost in our thinking mind for so long. We've been lost in that voice in our head that we mistake ourselves for that as the core of what we are. But you take a step back from that, like you've been doing, and you realize, well, that's me.
Yeah.
It's funny, they've never actually found a thought inside a head ever before. We always refer to thinking happening inside our head because it feels like it's here.
Yeah.
But they've never found a thought inside a head.
Yeah.
So it's like
That's
exactly
so
what you're
true.
saying. Whereas
Like maybe it's our
thought,
stomach generating a thought. Like,
or where it's just appearing. Like,
Yeah.
we think it's here, but is it really inside
There's
your
a
head?
neural correlation
There is a neural
to thoughts,
correlation.
but no one's found.
Yeah, the
thoughts.
brain's more like you can almost think about like the frequency as
An
the
antenna,
thoughts. It's like the radio that the frequency comes through.
yeah.
So you can see the activity through it, but Is that where it's from?
Yeah, and what you were saying before about meditation is like mindfulness literally means conscious awareness. In scientific terms, they call it meta-consciousness. So this means it's the ability to be aware of your inner world. And that's what mindfulness, that's what meditation does. It expands your conscious awareness, which is different from awareness.
Yeah.
Awareness, like every moment of my experience, because life is just experience at every moment. And experience is always awareness plus an object. So right now, you're aware of the sound of my voice. And then a moment later, you might be aware of your thought, right? And then every moment of experience is always awareness plus an object. That's what I call primal awareness. And I think you guys might refer to it as the ether, the conscious, the quantum field. So primal awareness is just the background of life happening all the time. But when you meditate, you become more mindful. Human beings have developed this capacity to be consciously aware, to be aware that we are aware. Because the dog is aware at every moment, but it's not aware that it is aware.
Yeah.
We are the only ones that have that capacity to be
Right.
consciously aware that we are aware.
Right.
And
That's
in
wild.
meditation, you become consciously aware that what you are is awareness. And this awareness, this primal awareness, I'm suggesting that it's what everything is. It's what we are.
I think that's what I tripped up on when I first started meditating, is the whole, these thoughts shouldn't be here. I need to like dissipate these thoughts. They need to go. But it's actually not like that, is it?
If you could stop thinking, don't ever have a negative thought ever again.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Don't think about an elephant right now. Nothing to do with an elephant. Just don't do it. And you're like, no, I can't. Because your thoughts are just spontaneous. They're constantly happening. Stop trying to force them away and thinking it's wrong that when you meditate you have thoughts. They're going to be there. They're moving in and out. It's just being aware that they are there rather than just being in them.
Right.
And it's the bane of any neuroses, is like just constantly being addicted to believing in all your thoughts, not knowing that you can just allow them to pass.
Yeah.
And over time, when you allow certain scary thoughts to pass or whatever, they lose their energy. And then it's also neurosis, I would say, is an unwillingness to feel your feelings, the unwillingness to feel discomfort. But through meditation, that's essentially what we're doing, is we're learning to be okay with discomfort. And we're learning to allow our thoughts to just leave and park themselves. They're leaving at every moment. It's just that we follow them. Let's just bring that back. I'm scared of that one. I don't want to think that one.
Yeah.
And
Even
sorry.
no, even how you guys were saying yesterday, like when you're meditating, you hear a noise, and then it goes silent, and then you hear a noise again. You wouldn't know that anything's noisy if there wasn't the silence.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly right.
That tripped me out yesterday.
100%. So, and that's the meditation we're doing yesterday, is noticing that these sounds are in the foreground, but in the background there's an element of quietness. And it has to be there, because you wouldn't be able to hear the sound if there wasn't a quietness in the background. And that which is noticing sounds is the quietness. That which is noticing everything, or sounds especially in this conversation, is the quietness of awareness. It's the silence of consciousness. So there's always this quietness and silence of mind in the background that's noticing sounds in the foreground. And that's exactly what we were talking about yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's funny when people think about meditation, I know that like for a lot of people it's like, I don't know if I want to do it. It can feel really uncomfortable at first, because there is a lot of misconception around it. I think one of the biggest ones being that like you should feel relaxed. And like if you think that you're meant to sit down and feel relaxed during meditation, you're wrong. You're probably, sometimes you'll feel more agitated because you're uncovering things that you haven't wanted to look at and you've wanted to distract yourself from. But like the one thing that controls the majority of our life is our thoughts and our feelings. Well, it does. It controls everything. Everything that comes out of our mind usually will react off and do things. But none of us really understand our inner world. We've never been taught, and we've never taken the time to sit down and listen and just be on our own. So there's something controlling everything in your life and you have no idea how it works. That's meditation is about starting to understand your mind, understanding the inner world of yourself, and just listening. And when you start listening, wow, like that's when you start really starting to learn stuff. And it's like things just start unraveling, and you don't have to do any specific like crazy things. It's just you sit down, take a little bit of space, and it has profound implications on your life. The biggest. Like if there's one thing I could gift everybody in the world, it would be the dedication to stick to a meditation practice.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's that's actually a good description of meditation. It's like you become a scientist of your own mind, right? Because the human mind, not even psychologists, neuroscientists, no one knows how it works, right? Each one of us is well placed to be the expert of our mind, but we have to observe it. We have to understand it. And so, as Zana was saying, meditation is really the exploration of your mind. And the mind is actually, like, in every moment of life, all we have is our mind. All we have is our mind at every moment. And yet we know nothing about it. And we avoid it at all costs. It's insanity.
Yeah, we do avoid it. Like a lot of us can't even sit on the couch without looking at the phone.
Yeah.
Can't just sit there. Like
It's autopilot, eh?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's getting worse as well,
Yes.
because I never used to be this addicted to my phone.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'll purposely leave my phone at home if I'm going, say, to the doctor's or just an appointment, and sit there and wait for my appointment without scrolling. Because you see even like really, really old people doing it now.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
everyone.
I'm
Parents
like,
are
everyone's
constantly on
addicted to
Facebook.
it. It's
Yeah.
not just young people.
No.
Yeah, fully.
No.
It's
Yeah,
like
and that's why it's-
everyone's like this, you know, and I'm
Yes.
just like, I can do this.
But it's an effort, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
an effort. It doesn't come naturally.
No.
Everything's on
I
your
have
phone.
to be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I have to consciously go, I'm leaving my phone at home. I'm leaving my phone in the car and I'm going in to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not
crazy.
something that comes naturally.
Nah.
That's you can mini meditations when you're in places like
Yeah.
that. That's the beauty of meditation. When you learn it, you start doing mini meditations on the bus, in the taxi,
Yeah.
when you're waiting for something.
Yeah.
And every time you do it, you're expanding your conscious awareness. You're starting to understand yourself at a deeper level. And like some meditations are supposed to be relaxing.
Yeah.
So not every meditation is like an exploration
No.
into your mind.
Yes.
And a lot of the times meditation has incredible benefits in soothing the nervous system and helping to heal the nervous system. And so I love doing some relaxation ones sometimes.
Yeah. Just
And
doesn't always.
No, it's just that
relate
we're
to it.
stuck on. Most people are just like, it's just a relaxation technique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, breath work. If you want to relax, do some breath work.
Yeah, that's a
Meditation
tool way.
is about understanding yourself at a deeper level.
Yeah.
And if some people have asked me like, what should I do more? I'm like, if you can do both, do both. But meditation should be the everyday
Trumps.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes you want to do breath work, do it. It's amazing. But meditation's your everyday thing.
Yeah.
It's what's going
So
to...
would you say breathwork's kind of like a bit of maintenance, and then meditation's like the essence, like it should just be a staple of the day?
I feel like if you're really, really wound up and you find it so difficult to sit down, then definitely do breath work. Maybe
Yeah.
for like even like a month or so.
Yeah.
Get yourself into that habit and then kind of switch it over. You could even just at the end of your breathwork session lie there for a
Yes.
minute or two and just be there.
It's actually brought so much to light for me, because I think when I started breath work, I did find it easier
Yeah.
because it's something to do and
Yes.
you're concentrating.
Yes.
And I started avoiding my meditation.
Yeah.
And
And
you can
I'm
lay
like-
down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
You could lay
when you
down
do your
and just-
meditations, just sit in a seat. You don't have to sit in like a
Yeah.
pose on the floor. Just sit.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Just
Totally.
sit comfortably in a seat and just that's what Isaac does every time. There's something you said before about autopilot, which I had this thought the other day, and I know you like to meditate in the evening. I prefer it in the morning. And I think for me, I had this thought the other day that like sometimes we can get so routined that like you get up in the morning, you just straight away start doing your normal autopilot, right? And you can go the whole day being on that autopilot before even like recognizing what Isaac was saying before, like, oh, I'm aware, or oh, I'm having thoughts or whatever. For me in the morning, meditation is that step between getting out of bed and being asleep to the waking state and being like, okay, this is where I start my day. I start my day with myself. I
Yeah.
start to create that space within myself. I become aware of any thoughts that are sort of coming up. That gives me a little bit of insight of how I'm feeling as well. Instead of just going into full reaction mode and getting everything done and stuff, sets me up so that I move into my day from that space.
Yeah.
So I feel like that for me is just like a great way of breaking that autopilot.
Yeah.
And not just going boom, 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 boom,
Yeah,
and then getting to the end of the day and being like, oh, wow, what happened?
Is there anything you could suggest with like busy mums that have kids that wake up at like 5 a.m. and like a lot of the time I am choosing that last little 20 minutes of sleep over getting up, and I mean, you guys stayed the night last night. You can see it's like chaos.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would suggest for mums, or just, you know,
Tough.
It is so tough.
Well, I would
like, is it just worth waking up and just?
I think I think once you understand how much meditation will affect your life in a profound way, then it becomes like the priority.
Yeah, true. Because my parenting will change as well.
Exactly.
Massive.
Like conscious parenting. Like there's a big thing I've heard people talk about conscious parenting. I'm like, how can you do conscious parenting if you're not cultivating more mindfulness?
Yeah.
And like being able to, like, as Zana was saying earlier, not always react from the same place. Or maybe you do react, but to be able to have a moment to just observe your feelings, the heat of anger rising in your body, and allow that to dissipate, and then respond in it from a different place.
Yes.
That is like life-changing for your kids, for your family, for your partner.
The way you feel every day.
I think, definitely need to.
And also it's
change
very
it up.
restful as well. Like, once you start doing it more and more, meditation does still rest your body and your mind. So even though you're not sleeping, you still are doing something that's like beautiful for your nervous system. So
whenever, I would say, going back to your question, once you know how life-changing it is for you, and it just, whoever does it, there's never been a person who's committed to meditation. We're like, I'm really gutted I did that. Every person is like, I would never, it's the best thing I've ever done for myself. And so once you understand how beneficial it is, then you'll just, like, whatever time works for you. Like, if you have 5 minutes to sit in your bed before you have to go to the kids, use that 5 minutes.
So it doesn't need to be like a 20-minute thing every day.
Whatever, I would say every day is the key.
Yes.
But whenever is good, whenever can fit, especially if you have kids running around all over the place, whenever you have a moment. And just like telling yourself, like, this moment for me to meditate is going to literally start to have profound effects on my life.
Because
it's just 5 minutes or 4 minutes.
It goes from a seated practice to movement through your day. That's the most incredible part. You'll start with like, I just need to sit down and have my space. But then you'll have those same pop-outs from your thoughts throughout while you're driving, while stuff's happening. And then that just gives you that like mini little coming back to yourself, that mini little centering throughout your day, which stops you from that autopilot. And that autopilot creates that tension in your body where you're just like moving about, right? And then your nervous system's always ramped up. And it's not till you fall down on the couch, then you're like, So it's like, if you've got those little like mini like moments throughout your day, it just starts to change the way you move, the way you think, the way you feel. And that just has incredible implications on your life.
So like, what is shadow work? Is there like a wrong and right way to even do that type thing?
So I'll explain what the shadow is first, and then you can explain what shadow work is. So kind of think of it like this. When you're a child, when you're first born and you start experiencing life, you're like a 360-degree expression of all possibilities. So in that, you can be happy, you can be sad, you can be annoying, you can be mean, you can do all these different things, right? And we all express that. You see some children, they're just like crazy, and then some children that will be really kind. But during our life, and especially when we're younger, we start learning what's socially acceptable, what will get me love from my parents and from my peers and from my teachers and what have you. And so when we start learning that, we start learning the behaviors that don't get us love. So we start kind of putting those behaviors and those ideas into our bag behind us, to kind of keep them in our bag behind us. So, don't do that. Don't stand on the chair. Don't do those types of things. Okay, well, I know now I need to do that. I need to make sure that I act this way in order to get love. So by the time we get to 20, we're sort of left with this, like, we've gone from the 360-degree circle, and we've just got this little piece of pie at the top. And that becomes our persona or our personality, or who we show ourselves to be in the world. And it's all our ideas of what we relate to as me. But what we forget is that all those expressions that we had as a child that we did at times are still within us, but we just don't acknowledge them. So they become part of our shadow. And that's what the shadow is. It's the parts that we reject of ourselves.
It's all those bits that you've put in that bag.
Exactly, behind you.
Yeah.
So when you're doing...
It's the unconscious mind.
Yes. So the shadow is the unconscious mind. It's the rejected parts of you that you don't want to look at, but are definitely still there and available to come out at any moment. So when you're doing shadow work, you're starting to bring to surface the things that you have rejected within yourself, the things that you believe aren't part of who you show to the world, but do often come out in relationship or in times when you're triggered or you do certain things, and you might not be consciously aware of them, but they're definitely a part of your experience and the way you express yourself. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so when you're doing shadow work, like we gave you guys an example yesterday, Isaac did, about like a girl that had a shadowy part of herself that might be really slutty, right? And she's like quite promiscuous in the way that she wants to be. But in her persona, she's very prim and proper, and she would never do anything like that go sleep around or stuff. But she has these like intrusive thoughts about sexual stuff and won't look at them as like, oh my God, I don't know where that comes from, because she's denying that aspect of herself.
Right.
Now, it doesn't mean
She'll say, it's not me. That's not me.
That's not
Yeah.
me. Like, I don't know where that thought comes from. That's not me. It's not part of who I am. And so what ends up happening is that she's denying that aspect of herself, but it is still very much a part of her psyche. So it doesn't mean she necessarily has to go out and be slutty and go out and sleep with a whole different people. She could if she wanted, but that's not necessarily what it is. It's seeing that part of her is there, and it needs to be encompassed into her whole personality, so that then it doesn't start to act out in different ways, because she might inadvertently look at other women who are more promiscuous or more like open with their sexuality and be like, she's just a slut. She's just like this. I don't like her for this way. And really, she doesn't realize she's doing that because she's denying that part of herself.
Projecting,
She's projecting it onto somebody else.
Right.
Yeah. It's like the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. The shadow's like Mr. Hyde.
Right.
Dr. Jekyll's this nice scientist, but then at night Mr. Hyde comes out because he's been suppressing all of this shadow part of himself for so long, and this monster erupts and goes out on the town and does all sorts of terrible stuff. So the shadow is, like Zana said, it's the rejected, denied, unconscious parts of our personality that haven't fitted our society and the persona that our parents want us to be.
And so those shadows, they should be acknowledged and be like, hi, I know you're there. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rather than
pushed down. Yeah. It's understanding that she
like
may
not
be,
act on it as such, but
you don't
acknowledge.
have to, yeah. But instead of her just sitting there thinking like, oh, like maybe the reason that woman evokes that part in me of feeling that way, the way I'm projecting that, is because I'm actually not realizing that there's a part of me that wants to be more explorative sexually or wants to be more open in that sort of aspect, rather than deny it and think that it's wrong. And when you start looking at those types of things, you might go, well, why is it that I think it's wrong? Is it because I'm trying to gain love from somebody who also has that suppression? Or you can start to kind of figure out where and why you were sort of programmed to be that way. Like Isaac said, with your parents, you know, maybe there's in the family, sexuality was like, oh, that's terrible. So then you take on that and you believe that's not what you should be like. But it's definitely a part of you.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like shadow work is complex. It's nuanced, and it's not as simple as just like here's a step by step. It's quite spontaneous and intuitive. And I would say that meditation, developing more conscious awareness, is like the kind of catalyst to being able to discover these parts of you. But we could say that when it comes to first of all, becoming aware of your shadow is just the number one thing. Becoming aware of these parts of us that we don't like is the most important thing. And then essentially at every moment when you become aware of that part of you, you can either surrender to it. Like, let's say I have a bully in my shadow, an aggressive bully. I can surrender to it in that moment when I'm consciously aware of it, or I can resist it. And most of the times I'm going to want to resist that, right? But in the end, when it comes to our shadow expressions, our personality, rejected personality parts, they all need to be embraced and they need to be loved.
Right.
that's not acted out. That's embraced.
Yes.
There's a difference.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Yeah, he's not going to act out as a bully.
No, so I'm not going to act it out. I'm going to resist acting it out. But when I start to recognize where the bully comes from in me, where it comes from this protective mechanism as a vulnerable little kid who used to get picked on by other people, by his own brother. When I understand where that bully comes from, all of a sudden this like level of compassion arises for that part of me. And so now I can embrace it in the sense that I can acknowledge that it's a part of me and send it my compassion and my kindness when and I'm going to resist it most of the time because I don't want to be a bully, right? But I do have to send my love to it and acknowledge it.
And there's levels to that. At the start, you wouldn't have even known that you're a bully, right? So you have to become aware that I have that attribute of being a bully. That's kind of the first part of recognizing it. And then where does that bully come from is kind of as you start to unravel it a bit more.
It's a protector. Most of the time, these things are protectors. And when you realize like you would do anything to protect someone you love, your psyche's doing the same thing. It's protecting you. And when you recognize these things within yourself, then and you start to know where they come from, then it's easy to start to send your kindness to it. And essentially, shadow work is about integrating your shadow into your persona, into your ego, and being a more complete version of yourself. And the poet Robert Bly has a quote where he says, "Every part of your personality that you do not love will become hostile to you." And that's what he's meaning about the shadow. All of these parts that we've rejected, if we don't learn to acknowledge them and love them or send our kindness to them or be kind to them for what they've done for us, they've protected us in some way, they will become hostile to us in the sense of when we're drunk, when we're stressed. A lot of midlife crises would be about shadow repression. People are just doing completely opposite stuff to their personality.
So you can't really sit down and go, okay, today I'm going to do some shadow work, get a book out and start but you can see yourself in relationship with other people, which is where meditation helps because you can start to create that space, right? But seeing the way that other things that other people do that really tick you off, like, why does that annoy me so much? Usually it's because it's showing you a part of yourself that you don't want to look at. So, and that's why it's like quite
it's so
confronting.
true. I think like one of my shadows is, what's the word? It's being like condescending if someone's condescending to me. But then like, not that I do this to a person, but like when something happens, say at the supermarket yesterday, I was like trying to scan my stuff at the self-checkout and it wouldn't work. I'm like, well, no one's coming to help. Like no one's blah, 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 blah. And it's like being that real condescending talk to myself. And I'm like, but when people do that to me, condescending, I'm like, it infuriates me, but I do it.
And it's nice to label those things for like, I label them like as they are as a personality trait. It might be a bitch. You might not, your personality might be, I'm very nice, I'm a nice person. I have a bitch inside of me.
Totally.
That's part of shadow work.
It's
well, because that's what, like, because we always want to escape looking at it as well. Like, even when you said, you know, like, I'm not doing it outward to other people, but I do it to myself. But perhaps you do it outwardly to other people. You know,
well, I come from a super sarcastic family.
So you can start to understand where it is. But again, it's like, it doesn't really matter where it comes from. It's seeing it within yourself and being like, that's a trait that I have within me and I don't like in other people. And you start to kind of see like, oh, that's why I don't like it.
Relationships are the other best way to teach you about your shadow. Because the moment someone in your life that you know emotionally, there's something about them that emotionally grinds you all the time. Because there's things that we don't like. There's certain people do stuff and like, I don't really like that. But when something grinds you about someone, it's usually because you have that part of you. And you hate.
You're pretending. It's
unconscious to you.
It's so true.
And you're like, that person is always, I hate the way they're brash and they're a bully. And like, well, the reason why you hate it is probably because it's part of you as well.
That's probably one of, no, I shouldn't like, I can't be like, that's you. But like the bully stuff, I think you could relate to. Because you hated bullies at school, but then like, you know, you do things to some of your mates, and I'm like, babe, that's so mean. That's bullying.
But this is part of it, to acknowledge that. Like, yes, it's part of me.
And
it's
now
very
that
free.
I say it,
he's
I'm
like,
like
retracting into the chair.
I'm like, it's not really bullying. That's not bullying to me.
No,
this
but
funny?
it is. I know exactly. Definition of bullying.
Yeah, I know. And they laugh
He
as
thinks
well.
he's having fun and they'll laugh, but I'm like, babe, but
They're not enjoying it.
they're not actually like,
And that
what
was
do you think they're
Isaac's
going to
biggest
do?
thing.
Cry
Yeah.
in front of you?
Yeah.
You're going to do it even more.
Yeah, Isaac would do that. Like any way to deflect away from him because of exactly what he's saying. He would be a bully in order to not see that like little child in him that was scared, that like protective, you know.
And that's another part of my shadow that I've unearthed. I call it the weak and needy child. I was always like this kind of needy, kind of vulnerable, weak and needy child. And then the bully became a protector of that part of me.
Yeah.
And then as I became spiritual, then the bully no longer, that's not part of a spiritual persona.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
goes into the bag as well too. I'm
Yeah.
not like that.
Yeah.
You know, but like these things have a
Probably
tendency.
made it worse.
Well, when you push them down, it's like a beach ball. You push it into the water and it's going to pop back up.
Yeah.
And again, that's probably why a lot of people have midlife crises and stuff. And it's why we're in conflict with each other, with ourselves so much. Like our psyche has all these different parts to it and we're constantly like arguing with ourselves and stuff. These are parts of like our shadow and repressed parts of us and parts of it, protectors and stuff. Most of the time, most of our thoughts, the horrible ones that we hate, they're usually protective mechanisms. They're usually protectors that have become very confused and misguided.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the shadow can be a way of, shadow work can be a way of like learning to uncover these things about yourself and stop the conflict within.
Yeah.
Stop fighting yourself all the time to create a more compassionate inner world. And that's when I was talking about the task approach before that we created. For anxiety and all difficult emotions, it's about creating that more compassion and a kind inner world and learning to accept these emotions and these parts of us so that because like most people, you know, you would say, what are your unhappiest times in life? It's when you're in conflict with yourself. Because like we might have an argument with someone we love, it's over. Then we go off and we like ruminate for like days.
It's like, look at what's going on with us. It's like, and
Definitely.
we found that last night. It's like we're going through something and I felt like I've been hurt by two people close to me and I feel like they didn't love me.
Yes.
And then it was triggered because I've always seeked my mum's love.
Yeah. And
it's
it's something
weird.
quite profound that you said to me, which is exactly what you'd said about your mum. And I was like, wow, like
Yeah.
the crossover. I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's deeper than just the act of what those people did.
Yeah.
Which is, incredible.
And it's like coming from being, and it's made me like a people pleaser.
yes.
And because I'm just seeking everyone to love me.
Yeah.
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 Which is wild.
Oh, look at you, unraveling it.
There's
There's some deep inner wisdom in all of
Yeah.
us. Yeah. You
I'm like, when
That's-
you say you can't like sit down and be like, I'm going to do shadow work. Now, like, I just want to go and do my shadow work. Like,
shadow work happens in relationship
does,
all the
yeah.
time.
yeah.
But like, there's a quote, I can't remember who said it, but like it really encompasses spirituality and this emotional work, shadow work. And I can't remember who it was, but she said, when you stop trying to be more than you are, you'll dare to be all that you are.
Wow. Yeah.
And that when you
it's
said, sorry.
and it's kind of why, like, of course we should try and learn new skills and, you know, become a more intelligent, stuff like that. That's all fine. But there's this big thing in this personal development world where we want to become a better person. And I'm like, no, it's fucking exhausting and it's never ending. What I feel like what we're supposed to do is discover our spirituality, what we are essentially, and then also start to integrate and embrace our complete personality. Because there's no one else in the world quite like you and you and you.
Yeah.
And
Like
when you integrate all of those parts of yourself, you are like special.
Yeah.
That's when you said before about the hostility, the Robert Bly quote where you're talking about everything that you won't acknowledge about yourself will become hostile.
Every part of your
Every part of your
personality,
personality. And you think about like that situation you just have and not acknowledging that part. Think of the hostility that's been created in your life by just not recognizing those parts of your personality. It's the same of not recognizing if you have that bully aspect. Like you act those parts out so much more because you're unwilling to look at it. If you sit there and go, I actually do have a tendency to be a bully. And then you start doing that, you're going to be aware of it when you're doing it. And then that starts to change the way you are as a person just naturally.
So true. It'll trigger that thought.
Exactly. Yeah. You're becoming more authentic. You're stepping into who you're meant to be more. And that's what being or leading from your authentic self is. It's starting to become more whole and rounded as a person and then leading from that place. And you don't have to forcibly change it. You just become aware. You create that self-awareness. Yeah. Which is, incredibly
it's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's kind of like I think of the like all of this kind of self-growth spirituality stuff as like coming to understand that what this universe is like a divine ocean, and I think it's an ocean of consciousness, and each one of us are an individual wave within that ocean, never separate from that divine consciousness, but completely different from every other wave as well too. And it's learning to understand our connection, our unity, and then learning to embrace our individuality, all parts of us. There's no one wave that is ever going to be like you or me, ever. Yeah. And I feel like that's
like, beautiful, because you're recognizing yourself as everything and everyone. So there's that interconnectedness of the ocean, but then also embracing the way that you are unique and all those aspects of yourself that you haven't wanted to look at and you haven't wanted to express or be. That's like the true essence of spirituality and emotional internal work. It's when you balance those two, it's beautiful.
That's so beautiful.
And I would say meditation is the beginning of that journey.
Yeah, definitely.
Breathwork can be the doorway, and then you walk through that doorway and start meditating. And essentially meditation becomes the kind of the pathway to that. And that's why, like, when people are like, oh, of course meditating is going to make me a little bit more present. I'm like, oh no. It's going to do
everything that we know.
It's going to do much more for you than just make you more present. It's going to profoundly change your life.
Yeah, definitely.
So you recommend doing it every day,
100%.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And there's no time limits? No.
I think just do it every single day. Start with 5 minutes. Commit to yourself in that way, and you'll find in time that won't be long enough. You'll want more time. And then some days you might need to pull it back because you've got things to do. But as long as you're doing it every single day, then it'll become a part of your life.
Yeah. And you'll find too, like, this is really important, is that maybe for the first year or even a couple of years, it's like a task that you do. But now, like, after years of meditation, like, I love it. Like, I'll sit there sometimes for an hour, like sometimes, and I've said like hour and a half. It's just, it's the most beautiful. It's like a place of refuge within yourself. And so, at first it becomes a task, but after there's like a breaking point where you get through that and you start to realize that, like, oh no, this is actually beautiful. This is something that I want to do every day. And the way that it affects my lives, my life and my relationships is just...
And the fact that people can sit down wherever they want and it's free.
Yes.
You don't need anything special.
So I started with guided meditations, and I still go back to guided meditations a lot. I enjoy really like sitting down without even music or anything now. But do you think guided meditations are a great way to start, like putting in...
Absolutely.
5-minute meditation, even into just YouTube.
Yep. Like we still often use meditations, like just to listen to and explore and stuff. Sometimes we'll sit in silence, but absolutely at the beginning, I think guided meditations are important because I think it just helps people to understand what they should be doing and gives the mind something to sort of like listen to or focus on. Yeah. So and there's so really many
creators out there for guided meditations now, and it's quite overwhelming. So, they have like release stress or release trauma or release this and start your day with that.
Yeah. I think when if you're really like, okay, I want to give this a go and I want to actually start to understand it, it can be good to do something that's a bit more structured in that way. Yeah. Where you've got like a kind of like explanation about why you're doing it, what you should expect, those types of things, because it just helps to pave your journey. Otherwise, you're right, it can be like a little bit like a pick and mix. Yeah. Which eventually might be a good thing, but I think at first when you just trying to create that habit, something fairly simple, like just as important.
And like having someone, it's like going to the gym, right? You go to the gym for years and then you get a really good personal trainer and you realize, geez, I wish I did this at the start.
Yeah.
You're better off just getting someone who's experienced and embodied meditation to guide you.
Yeah.
Just even a little bit with a course or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because like in the
Yeah.
gym, you're like, why did I just not do this in the beginning?
Totally.
Yeah.
I remember saying that exact thing when Zana was training me in Melbourne.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is like, unfortunately, there's some bad meditation stuff out there. Like I constantly see on Facebook that like people are selling scripts for meditation teachers to read their scripts. Like they sell them the scripts. So I'm like, listen, if you're buying someone's scripts, you haven't embodied your meditation practice. And so maybe just like teach your mother or something for a while or something like that, you know, like embody your meditation before you're guiding up, like a personal trainer.
Totally. And so where can people find your course? Just go straight through Instagram, Mindful Growth.
We encourage people even just to reach out and like talk to us about things as well. So if they want to send us a DM because they're just feeling like really lost and they, you know, want to understand a bit more, we have a whole lot of content on there that we share all the time that has little snippets.
Where's on there?
On Mindful Growth Academy, which is our Instagram page. And then from there you can link through to do our courses, which are on our website. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll put them on the screen.
I can't wait. I'm doing
there,
Zana's course.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Cannot wait.
You're ripe and ready to do the next stage for sure.
Yay, I can't wait. Well, thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you for
thanks
having
for
us.
Thank you
Pleasure.
very much for having us. Appreciate it.
I think
Next
this
time
will
we'll get
definitely
into
be
the
my
real
favorite
deep stuff.
Yeah. We'll get deeper.
We'll get into
and deeper every
non-duality
time.
next time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that really like buzzed me out last night.
Yeah, I've learned a lot from
Yeah.
this and last night as well. So thanks.
And man, like I was thinking about you this morning. I'm like, you're very intuitive with this,
definitely.
man.
Yeah.
Like I feel like you're both very ripe to like go further in your exploration.
Yeah.
The things you were saying, like I said, I've helped talk to people who've meditated for a couple of years and pointed things out, and they're like, so what? And you're like, you're already pointing those things out to yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like you should
Keep
going.
going with it.
Yeah, sweet. No, I definitely
Even
will.
for coaches to upskill and add new things in, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're definitely on that path.
Very cool.
Oh my God.
Okay, guys.
Right.
Thanks
Okay.
for tuning
Super
in. See you
tapping
next
in.
time.
Thank
Peace. Yay.